Michelle Rowlinson, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, good, thank you. How are you?
I am really, really good. A little bit nervous because I really don't know much about this subject at all. And it's something that keeps cropping up in the anxiety world for obvious reasons. And when I reached out to my community and said, what would you like me to talk about on the podcast this year? This subject kept coming up, the perimenopause and the menopause. And here you are. So I looked up who would be the best person to speak to. And I'm hearing good things about your work. So can you introduce yourself and let my audience know about your story, how you've ended up coming here, and then we can go from there.
Brilliant. Well, firstly, you're not alone. Many people either don't know about menopause or haven't heard about perimenopause. So it's great to get as much out there as possible. So, yeah, so I'm Michelle. So by trade, I was a senior physiotherapist. And this is going back about 9 years ago now. At the age of 33, I started getting symptoms that I just didn't understand what was happening to me. And they started getting more and more debilitating, even things like looking at my diary, getting to the waiting room, and I couldn't remember my patient's name. And it was like, oh my God. And I'd have to go and make an excuse at the reception. I'm just checking something. Just like it's all right if I already knew them because obviously I knew their face. But yeah, if it was a new patient, didn't know which one they were. It was like, oh God. So yeah, so it was things, but I mean, there were so many symptoms. And I thought I had the onset of dementia. I thought, I just didn't know what was going on with me. And I then someone sort of mentioned perimenopause, and I was like, what on earth is perimenopause? I've never heard of it. Started Googling, as you do, and realized, oh my God, that's 100% me. And then started to do a bit more research and found that there's actually ways that you can reduce symptoms naturally as well, but women just aren't told about it. Um, and then started to realize more and more that doctors actually, many of them haven't got a clue about perimenopause
Mm.
either. We all think it's menopause, 50s, 60s, no periods, hot flashes, mood swings, job done. No, there's so many symptoms. So that led to me writing a book, which became number one bestseller, You Me Conquering Perimenopause and Menopause.
Wow, congrats.
And yeah, it was really exciting. So, and it just spiraled. Women were asking me for advice, and I was like, well, I better get qualified. I can't just give out advice based on my own experiences. I need to actually know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
That led to me becoming a menopause wellbeing practitioner. Um, yeah, and this year has just gone crazy. I've been doing workshops, like menopause awareness workshops, because what 1 in 3 workers now are over the age of 50, and 70 to 80% of those are women in work who are menopausal.
Wow.
Uh, so that's when I was like, oh my God, and a high percentage of women won't actually tell their line managers why they're calling in sick or what's going
Okay.
on. They're embarrassed of the stigma or worry they'll lose their job. So that's
Okay.
sent me on that mission. And then it's, yeah, just needing, I've just felt I had to do more and more and more because it's global. It's not just the UK, it's globally. Women are being failed massively because of the lack of training in women's health.
I am so with you on this. I keep hearing this over and over. That's why I believe what you're doing is so important. So let's go back a little. What were the symptoms you were experiencing that, besides obviously forgetfulness, which you obviously your mind might have catastrophized a little and jumped to dementia, understandable. But what was it that you were going through that, if you were to do like a checklist of symptoms, what was it that you were experiencing?
Yeah, so I had quite a few. So if you Google it, it says about 34, 38 symptoms. Recent
Okay.
studies actually showing there's over 100 symptoms because
Whoa.
estrogen receptors are in everything. So everything gets affected when your estrogen is going up and down and declining. So my first symptom, now because I had the coil, I didn't and because I've got a condition called endometriosis, so I didn't get the first sign is usually like irregular periods. So I didn't get that because I wasn't having periods, because that's how endometriosis spreads. So I didn't get that one. So the first one was unexplained weight gain, and it didn't matter what I was doing, it just kept piling on to the point where my son admitted a few years later, his friend's mum thought I was pregnant because
Oh,
it was
wow.
just all around the middle, and I just went
Okay.
from a size 8 to a size 14, like within a year. It just went bang.
Mm.
I was in the gym gunning it, and I now know that actually women need, there's different exercises for women because you don't want to increase your cortisol, so actually you, hence why it just kept going up and up.
Mhm.
I had hair falling out. Thankfully I've got really thick hair, but it got to the point of like 6 months of just hair just everywhere. uh,
Wow. Okay.
Acne. I had worse acne than when I was a teenager. So again, that affects your self-esteem. You're feeling fat, you're feeling spotty, you don't want to see people. I had heart palpitations to the point where I couldn't breathe sometimes. Just I had to take like a deep breath to what felt like resetting my heart, is what it felt like.
Mm.
And not once, again, it's all health professionals, not just doctors. Not once did anybody mention that it could be perimenopause. They tried to put me on beta blockers, and I'm so glad I refused them, because I was just like, well, am I going to die? And they were like, well, no. Well, what happens if I don't take the beta blockers? Well, nothing. You'll just get the symptoms. I thought, fine, I'm happy to put up with them as long as I'm not going to die.
Okay.
So I had really bad gums. Again, the dentist just gave me a lecture about oral hygiene rather than, oh, it could be a perimenopause symptom, because I'd spent nearly £1,000 trying to stop my teeth falling out.
Wow.
And it makes sense that when you're pregnant, you get free dental treatment because you're more likely to lose teeth because of hormones. Well, it's the same hormones, that are going up and down. So it makes
Wow.
perfect
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I had crippling anxiety attacks. I went from a confident woman to, I write about it in my book, because lots of personal stuff in my book, but I was in, a supermarket, and I had to literally just leave my shopping because I was having a panic attack over whether I was getting the right cereal. I mean, it was just
Mm.
insane, and getting anxiety driving, like hill starts when I'm a really confident driver. 1 week after I passed my test, I was up to Liverpool and from down south, and never had a problem driving. And suddenly I'm like, whoa, at big roundabouts and parking, and I'm like, what is going on? But yeah, and even sort of gritty, dry eyes, which again, when I went to get my eyes checked just a few months ago, so obviously I knew what was going on, but my mum's got
Mm.
glaucoma, so just wanted to double check it wasn't, because I always say to my ladies, any symptoms, always double check it's not something else. Don't just assume, because we don't want to go on to that side of things. My optician bought my book because she was in her 40s, never heard of perimenopause, and realised she was menopausal.
Wow. Wow. There's
So
quite a lot to, yeah, it's quite a lot to unpack there.
yeah.
Let's just go to, so what is, the obvious question, what is, I've heard of the menopause. And then when I was talking to you, I heard about a perimenopause.
Yeah.
What are they and what's the difference?
So there's three stages to menopause. So you've got perimenopause, which is the transitional phase leading up to menopause. So this is where your body is starting to prepare itself for not being reproductive anymore. So this is where, and I get a lot of questions about is menopause worse, because we've all heard of that, and not perimenopause. And actually, peri is usually the one where you get the worst symptoms because your hormones are fluctuating up and down. So
Okay.
that's generally when actually you sort of feel at your worst. Menopause is then when you've had no periods for 12 consecutive months. And this is when you're then in your non-reproductive. Now, some women can end up with, no periods for sort of 10 months and then get a period and they're like, oh, I'm still in peri. So, it's
Okay.
12 consecutive months. The interesting bit is post-menopause is actually when you've had 12 consecutive months and a day. So you're only in menopause for a day, which is your 12 consecutive months, and then you're post-menopausal.
Okay.
And I get many women sort of when I'm at events, because I do lots of wellbeing events, and they all go, oh, I'm past that now. I'm post-menopausal. And I'm like, that's great. So you're not getting any symptoms. Oh, well, I'm still getting hot flushes and things. And I'm like, yeah. So normally about 4 or 5 years post-menopause, women's symptoms tend to die off where your estrogen's low and stable. But this is where one of the myths is that I've had 88-year-olds come up to me going, why am I still getting hot flashes? This is ridiculous. And it's because we are post-menopausal for life. Some women are lucky and don't get any symptoms, but it is possible to still need to manage your symptoms because you've got low estrogen.
So you're menopausal for a day. You had the menopause for a day, and then you're postmenopausal. Is that right?
Yeah. So
I've
it's
never heard of that. Because the other people say I've got the menopause, and I
we
thought it
kind
was
of
a yeah.
yeah, we kind of sort of amalgamate your menopause with your postmenopause.
Okay.
So that's usually people just call it menopause.
Okay. Yeah, that's blown me away a little. I'm learning so much already. And okay, so the perimenopause is a transition leading up to the menopause.
Yeah.
So 12 consecutive months with no period, and then you get the very short period of time, which is the day of menopause, and then after that, it's the post-menopause. And then some women can get as the estrogen drops to a certain level, that they get no much in the way of symptoms, and then there are people who continue to have symptoms for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. And this is
Yeah.
why it's really important with with regards to HRT or knowing how to reduce symptoms naturally if you either don't want to or can't take HRT. That you have those options for life. If and because some doctors are now realizing that, because some of them still live in the archaic years of saying, oh, you can only be on HRT for so many years and you need to come off it. With the body identical ones and the transdermal ones, and they're showing that actually, if you come off the HRT and you're struggling with symptoms, then it shows that you need to replenish that estrogen that you're no longer producing.
Okay, so is that what HRT does? Is that what HRT is, estrogen replacement?
Yes, it sort of replaces
Okay.
your progesterone, and depending on what you take. So if you've
Okay.
got a uterus, i.e., you've had a hysterectomy, then you don't need the progesterone.
Okay.
But if you do have a uterus, and this is again a really important factor, that you do need to take progesterone if you're taking estrogen, because the progesterone helps shed the lining of your womb. So if you don't do that, it can thicken your uterus, which can make you more predisposed to womb cancer.
Okay.
But because a lot of women, when they take the progesterone, sometimes their symptoms can get worse or they can feel quite unwell. This is where some women are intolerant to progesterone. So you have to tweak. It's very much trial and error with both the type of estrogen, with the progesterone, the dose. So a lot of women, when it doesn't work first time, they might come off it, or they won't tell their doctor that they're not taking the progesterone because they feel great on the estrogen, and doctors don't tend to sort of let women know why it's really important to take the progesterone. So if you are struggling and some things haven't eased after a few months of taking it, talk to your doctor about other ways of taking it, because you can get like a combined patch so that the progesterone, you can take it that way rather than the Eutrogestin tablet, or the coil you can have progesterone, or so there's lots of different ways you can sort of trial and error it.
I think a lot of people are listening to this thinking, oh, there's quite a lot to take in.
There is a lot.
And we've talked about doctors before having, being a bit archaic or stuck in their certain ways of thinking about the perimenopause. What does someone do if they have a doctor that doesn't seem that sympathetic or seems like they are regurgitating very outdated information? What would you advise?
So, and this is probably one of the biggest things that I work with my ladies in our sessions is literally this, because so one of the first things I always say is to journal your symptoms. Don't go there piecemeal like I did.
Okay.
If you go there with one symptom at a time, even if they're a doctor that's got women's health knowledge, if it's just one at a time, they might not put the dots together. So I always say sort of try and journal your symptoms, and write down any questions you've got before you go. Ask the receptionist if they've got a women's health trained doctor, because that will be your first hurdle gone. Because some surgeries, they do have ones that specialised in it, and that's usually sort of a game changer. If you've already seen a doctor and they've just dismissed you with the usual, oh, you're too young, which is one of my bugbearers, because it can happen at any age.
Really?
It can do. Obviously, the younger, the more rarer it is. They say between age 45 and 55 for sort of perimenopause, and menopause average is 51. But the more, I thought maybe I was just very young at 33, but the more I'm working with my ladies, actually mid to late 30s is really, really common. So,
wow, okay.
And most doctors, I mean, I had a 55-year-old that was told by her doctor, you're too young, and it was like, for God's sake. And then he was giving her advice, saying, oh, but you don't want to be on HRT for, you want it on as minimal as possible. And he was clearly stuck in the old trials that were proven in the early 2000s to be wrong. But yeah, so journaling. I also go there with some, if you think, or you've had, an experience where you have been dismissed, go there with some literature. And politely, because a lot, obviously, doctors don't like being told, but politely educate your doctor. So you can go with literature on the age. I mean, when you Google, often it does still say 45, but I have noticed now more and more is coming up saying, mid to late 30s for peri. If you're 45 or over, go with your NICE guidelines. National Institute of Clinical Excellence, because they state that over the age of 45, you don't need a blood test. You just go by symptoms for HRT. And you can insist. It's your right to try. They always start on a low dose, which is why it is trial and error, low dose, because you don't want to have too much estrogen and work sort of your way up. So yeah, and not just educate. I know that we go to the doctor because they're meant to know more, but I've found that women that have worked with me and have knowledge on all the different types of HRT, because a lot of doctors don't know all the different types of HRT, and there's even like with the patches, you've got different brands. So it might be that your skin reacts to the patch, but actually if you change the brand with different ingredients, you can still have the patch. So it's knowing, that there's a spray that if you don't get on with the gel because it takes ages to dry, the spray dries within a matter of seconds. So it's so it's going there with a bit of knowledge as well. Can really help.
Yeah. I think that's really great advice. I think some people might be thinking, I'm not confident enough to do that. And what would I journal? So is there like a little process that someone, because like listing symptoms, as you said, there's over
diary. So I don't like women to fix, because sometimes you can fixate too much. So I always try and say just kind of a casual diary of what symptoms frequency, your periods, if they're changing, because again, we all think it's just your periods getting less. Actually, they can get more frequent and heavier. So it's any change in your periods is usually one of the first signs. Something else I also say to my ladies when you're seeing your doctor is don't play down your symptoms. We're very good at doing that, saying, well, I get a bit warm, or well, I feel a little bit anxious when you've had a really bad hot flush, or you've had an panic attack, but you might just dabble it down a bit. So I always say, be honest so that the doctor knows how significant it is. And a lot of doctors will try and put you on antidepressants.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Generally, if you're going for, which was again sort of we mentioned about the brain fog, but again, I was feeling depressed. And I had a lot of stress going on. Generally, with my son's got Asperger's, and he was a teenager at the time, so it was very stressful. And yeah, they put me on. They went, "Oh, you're just a bit stressed and a bit depressed. We'll put you on citalopram."
Wow.
And so many of my women, this happens to them. I had one lady, so she saw a doctor. He offered her antidepressants and said, look, have a think. We'll book another appointment and talk about it. She spoke to me and she was like, I went, no, it doesn't sound like, you need to talk more about perimenopause. She thought, oh, he wouldn't listen. She went to phone back to cancel her appointment, found out that actually they hadn't booked her with him. They'd booked her with another one who is women's health trained. So she went, oh, okay, I will still have the appointment. And she was like, oh, no, we need to put you on, try some HRT, not antidepressants. And she got the right treatment.
That's so good to hear.
That's within the same surgery. So it shows,
yeah.
Again, if you're not happy with the outcome, just ask to see another doctor, even if they're not women's health.
I think it's incredible. And I hear this quite a lot in the anxiety world. It's pills before skills. And that's what I was offered when I had an anxiety disorder. I was too frightened to take them, and I'm looking back now, thinking I'm actually glad that I didn't. Though sometimes, when I was going through it, I was wondering. But it's this constant dishing out of tablets and pills for. Instead of actually exploring the actual, possible roots of the condition. It is astonishing. And you often wonder, what is the motivator for this? Does a doctor simply not know enough and it's a quick and easy fix? Or is it a pharmaceutical thing where, they push this agenda for people to be as medicated as possible? It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's generally, sometimes I think it's lack of knowledge. And again, I think there is a bit of a pharmaceutical thing going on as well. But and again, it's a bit of a postcode lottery. I've got one lady that she's trying to get the spray, and they keep saying, oh no, we don't produce that. And I've actually got the guy who works for the company that produces Lenzetto spray, and he's like, they can get it. It's widely available. So again, it's just sort of trying to battle through the practice, because then you can complain to the practice manager and just say, look, this is what I want to try, or I've not got on with the other ones. Or
do you think, right, that if this was a condition for men, actually that's a good question, do men get the menopause? Is that, like, we heard about the menopause, is that a thing?
Yeah, there is a male version.
Okay.
When testosterone levels, because they do naturally decline. Women, again, that's another thing we can cover in a minute, is we actually get symptoms from declining testosterone as well. But yeah, signs that, with men, is just not being enthusiastic in things that they used to be, putting on weight around the middle, similar symptom. But yeah, when we hear about, the midlife crisis of a man, either a new car or a new woman, things, usually it's, it is hormones that are kind of happening. So yeah, there is a male version.
Okay,
Um,
so there's a male version. So if this was if it was like the perimenopause for men, the menopause for men, post-menopause for men, do you think treatment would be different than what would be available for women?
totally. So as we've just said about the male version, testosterone is licensed for men. So men can just go to their doctor and say, I think I might have low testosterone. They'll check their bloods, and if it's low, then they're like, yeah, here you go. For a woman, it's not licensed yet. So that's something that we're fighting for. Because low testosterone is not just about low libido. It can cause mood, it can cause, bone muscle health. So there's, women can feel really, really miserable and rough due to testosterone. But
Wow.
because but only a specialist can prescribe it because it's not licensed. So it's a bit of a postcode lottery. You've got doctors that aren't qualified, so they 100% won't prescribe it. So they'll refer you to a specialist, which there can be a massive wait for. You've got doctors that are qualified in it, but again, because it's not licensed, they're not prepared to prescribe it. And then if you're really lucky, you might have one that's, really qualified in it and confident, and they can prescribe it. But it's one of the very few
Mm.
hormone tests that is accurate, because obviously they want to check that your levels are low enough that you're not going to go above a female level, so that you don't start, obviously hairs and
Yeah.
and things like that. So
Okay.
whereas again, a lot of doctors will do a blood test to check your
Mm.
hormones. And ironically, when they tend to do the test, which is in perimenopause, that's when they're actually quite inaccurate, because your hormones are fluctuating. And I get so many ladies that are like got symptoms screaming perimenopause, and yet because their hormones come back normal, whatever that is, because obviously they're not tested before, so we don't know what our normal levels are. The doctors will go, oh no, your levels are normal, so you're not perimenopausal, and then they get dismissed that way as well.
It is shocking. It is a shame that there's still this inequality and imbalance between treatment for men and treatment for women, and it's a
Yeah,
you know
we often say if it was a man problem, oh, this would have been sort of centuries ago. But even my partner, when obviously he's learned a lot of this during my journey, and he just looked at me and went, if you women have been going through this since day one, why has perimenopause only just come up? And it's true. It's because women used to just be silent. We were put in asylums,
Oh
so
yeah, yeah.
so if we went a bit doolally, as you want to put it, we were shoved in an asylum and forgotten about. Oh, she's just gone a bit mad, rather than actually we've got menopausal symptoms.
I mean, I'm just really grateful that things are changing for you, but it's still not enough, nowhere near enough. Do you know what I'm interested in though? Is looking at obviously, men have to get the low testosterone, women can get that as well, and the menopause itself, the perimenopause side of things. Is there is there something in our lifestyles? Is there something that can accelerate this? That can trigger worse symptoms. Really push it to a younger age. Is there something going on in our Western culture? Is it different in other cultures, for example, around the world?
Yeah. So the first thing is, Asian women don't tend to get symptoms anywhere near as badly, and it's thought
Mhm.
of that basically they eat a very sort of fresh, but also have a lot of phytoestrogens, which comes from plant-based food. Um, so again, sort of vegetarians, vegans might not get symptoms as much. They might do in the Western world because they're having lots of other things, but yeah, plant-based foods that have they phytoestrogen sort of attached to our receptors, similar, not quite as well, but similar to our own estrogen. So that can help as well. Processed foods can exacerbate symptoms. Poor gut health, because if we're constipated, things like that, it sits in the gut longer, so we can actually reabsorb the estrogen that's been detoxified. So that can actually give you estrogen dominance, which is a whole other part. I know it
That's
gets
scary.
dominance that can cause symptoms. So actually, we all think it's low estrogen, but actually, estrogen that's higher than your progesterone while things are playing about can cause symptoms as well. There's also man-made chemicals that mimic estrogen or can block our estrogen receptors. So there's xenoestrogens, which they're chemicals that can be in everything: our makeup, our hair products, all sorts of things. Eating meat that's been pumped full of hormones, that can affect our menopause. So
Okay.
there are lots. I would be
Yeah.
this would be like a week podcast. This is why my working with my ladies is really sort of
Yeah.
intense, and they come away just being blown with so many light bulb moments where they're like, oh my god. So yeah, there's anti-inflammatory diets that can help reduce, which I took my books with recipes that goes massively into more so the anti-inflammatory diet side of things. And I always say, even if you're on HRT, try and help naturally as well. So with exercise, with mindset, so de-stressing type things, because cortisol affects your estrogen. So if you're highly stressed, and the body doesn't know the difference between stress where you're worrying about your bills or anything like that, from fight or flight, you've got a saber tooth, obviously not saber tooth, but tiger coming towards you or something. So the body doesn't know the difference, and it will produce its stress hormone over sex hormones. So again, it's sort of trying to protect yourself with sort of de-stressing and not feeling like you're being selfish, because a lot of us, we all look after everybody, our children, and actually when you're at menopausal age, you're kind of a bit bookended, where you're often looking after your elderly parents and your teenagers, and a quarter of women age 50 to 64 are actually looking after people. So you've got that added into sort of your stress factors as well. So it's actually knowing, do you know what? No, I'm not being selfish. I do need to look after myself as well. Sometimes it can just be 5 minutes doing a bit of breath work, because that massively helps sort of bring down stress levels and things. So yeah, so I go through a lot of techniques for sleep, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I work with a lot of women. And I think the word that I hear in my office the most often, if I had a penny for every time I heard the word guilt,
yeah,
I could retire. There is this it's a cultural conditioning, isn't it, for women, that they just need to keep on going, keep on doing too much, just to try to deal with that guilt that they get inside if they stop, if they rest, if they do something for themselves, and then a positive element of self-care. And as a mindset coach, and I teach the breathwork side of things to my clients, and that is, it's the changing of that belief, changing of that mindset to really look after yourselves, because then you have the energy to look after other people. And if you're really happy, happier, and you're living authentically for you, then it's so much easier to help and manage other people around you.
And a couple of analogies I use, which often women then go, yeah, that makes sense, is one, you can't give from an empty cup. So if you're empty, you're not going to be as, think of it that you're not actually going to be as productive or as good for your family that you're looking after. And also, the oxygen mask, putting it on yourself before other people, because again, you can't help other people if you haven't got the oxygen and you're falling on the floor. So you need to look after yourself before you can look after other people effectively.
Such an important message. I also like to remind everyone who I work with that we don't attract what we want in life, we attract what we are. So if we're stressed, if we're feeling guilty, if we're feeling anxious, we tend to gravitate to more of those sorts of situations to kind of reinforce our beliefs and reality to be true.
Definitely. I'm a
Such an
firm
important
believer.
mindset. Yeah,
Yeah,
such an
I'm a
important
firm
mindset to
believer
get head around.
of our energy. We attract what we are.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone's listening to this, they heard just now some tips on what they could begin to do. What's if someone wants to really go the natural route to look after themselves, maybe they're not perimenopausal yet, that's something in the future and they can do something now about that. Or even if they're struggling with the perimenopause, what lifestyle choices would be like the top checklist for them to go through to begin to help themselves now?
Yeah, so I think definitely sort of low to moderate intensity exercise. So like swimming, Pilates, even a brisk walk, and try and do sort of 20 minutes a day if you can. So even if it's just like a brisk walk around the block. And equally, it's been proven that if you go for a walk after you eat, that can really help with sort of digestion. So again, good gut health, eating fresh, homemade type food. So not sort of live. Obviously, we all have to have a treat, but your majority is homemade, not sort of processed type food with like loads of chemicals and stuff pumped into it. Staying hydrated, because again, that helps with your gut health by being, as well as hot flushes, things like that. Hydration can help. A good sleep routine as well. You'd be amazed. Now, insomnia is a really big symptom that a lot of women get, but there's lots of things that you can, by having a healthy diet and also a good sleep routine, can help as well with symptoms, and just not being afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's support groups, or I do a free support group both online and in person, and so many of the women that just go, do you know what, just hearing other stories has made me feel, my God, I'm not going mad, or oh yeah, I relate to that, or and also it's a way of making new friends as well. But and I think that boosts your mood anyway when you're in a bit of a social. But yeah,
Okay.
just not keeping it to, if you are struggling or worrying, just not keeping it to yourself.
Do you think, I think that's great advice, and it's getting those basics right, isn't it? Especially the sleep. It's amazing how many people, especially I've worked with, really do resist trying to get their sleep right. It's their day is so, especially for women, there's that heavy mental load, carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And by the time their children have gone to bed and, they get to sit down on the couch, it's time to go to bed again. And there's a part of them that says, no, I'm going to literally I'll binge watch a few shows. I'll sit on my phone. I'll do anything to delay going to sleep and then starting this all over again. And there needs to be a change in how they're experiencing their day for sure. All of us, anyone they call it revenge bedtime procrastination.
Yes.
I know I want to go to bed and I know I need to go to bed, but that show was so good. I'm just going to watch a little bit more. And before they know it, it's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Not much fun. Not much fun. Yeah, I think we've all done it. We've all done it. Going back into the actual the perimenopause and the menopause itself. I remember telling you when we first spoke that there is almost like a scientific movement to see if they can get rid of it, to stop the menopause happening altogether. And I think a lot of people might think, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And you had a very interesting perspective on that. So what are your thoughts? Should we get rid of the menopause or should it stay?
Well, the thing is, it's a natural part of what women's bodies go through,
Mm,
and I think by getting rid of it, you're kind of trying to do the same as just shut us up or put us in a corner, or rather than actually trying to find ways that we can go through this, more empowered. And I find a lot of women, when they've gone through the menopause, actually we're much more wiser and more confident when we come out out the other side, so to speak.
mm. Okay.
um and I think it's, as I say, just such a natural progression that I just don't see why we don't have to. I think it emphasizes that, oh yeah, we'll get rid of it because you have to suffer through the menopause, and you don't have to suffer with the right advice and the right
Mm.
treatment.
I guess it says you're almost broken, aren't you? If you've got the menopause, you need to be fixed,
Yeah.
and we can save you by getting rid of it completely. And I love that you say, it seems, and I've heard this before, there seems to be this wisdom, this rebalancing, this reconnection from life, from experiencing the menopause. So yeah, so isn't it more about the acceptance of it and working with it rather than alienating them, ourselves from something which is a natural condition?
Yeah, because I feel like it's like we're still trying to give it a stigma. And actually, if you go into the science part of it, once all your hormones have gone up and down and everything else, it's like the brain sort of recalibrates itself, and that's when suddenly we stop. We stop worrying what other people think so much as we get
Mm.
older, and doing things what we want to do, and well, to hell, obviously if it's not hurting other people, but to hell what you think. I mean, definitely with me, you wouldn't have got me on this podcast. You wouldn't have got me on. Now I've had to go through all my fears of, I wasn't a social media person. Now I'm on TikTok with loads of followers and doing reels all the time, and to me I'd literally would be like, oh, but what would people think of me? Are they going to hate
Mm.
me? Are they? And okay, there was a little bit of that when I first started them. You all have nerves, but now I'm like, do you know what? I know that what I'm doing is from a place of wanting to help people. I know there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. And if there's going to be, there's been a couple who have been like, oh, you're trying to scaremonger women, or you're trying to make everything about menopause. And it's like, no, I always state in all my videos, always get symptoms checked to make sure it's not something else more sinister, because there's lots of things that can mimic, like thyroid, polycystic ovarian syndrome, that can mimic symptoms. So always get everything ruled out first. But actually, it's important to be aware of what symptoms could be. Things
Yeah.
like a metallic taste in your mouth, or burning mouth, or there's itchy ears seems to be a really common one. I put itchy ears on one of my TikToks, and just the comments just went nuts, going, oh my God, I've been seeing people about my ears for the last year, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was. And so it's about being able to just go, that explains what that is now. Is why I do it, and realize that I have to get out of my comfort zone, because
Mm.
I have to get my message and to get it out there for them.
And you're doing a brilliant job of it, I have to say. And so thank you for everything that you're doing. Uh, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on to the show. I know that, yeah, it's a challenge for you. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I've learned so much. I'm sort of blown away a little by what's been discussed with me today, and I really hope listeners have also got the same for themselves too, and not to just put up with the current narrative around the perimenopause and menopause. Is to actually, if you can, get more assertive, and also reach out to help from you. Where can people find you, Michelle?
So I'm on Facebook. You can just
Yeah.
look up my name, Michelle Rowlinson.
Yeah.
Um, Instagram, TikTok. I know you're going to put sort of links in.
I will do.
I, as I say, I've got a masterclass coming up that will help on the 18th, Monday, the 18th of September, where I'll be giving lots of advice. So I've given you the link that people can
Yeah.
sign up to get on my mailing list, where they can sort of get more information about what I'm going to cover, dates, times, things like that. And to anybody that signs up to the mailing list, I'm giving free affirmation cards to help with their mindset as well. So
Wow.
you'll
Okay.
get lots of information on the masterclass, but you'll also, as I say, as a thank you to signing up, some affirmation card, 25 affirmation cards. So they've got that they can use every day for,
Amazing.
yeah.
Excellent. Michelle, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and good luck with your mission to help as many people with the perimenopause and menopause as possible. It
Thank you.
truly is incredible.
No,
So anything I can do to support you, do let me know.
thank you. Well, I do the one-to-ones and the workshops both
Yeah,
online and in person. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We can either work like with Zoom like we are, or I can, if you're sort of in England, then I do travel for the workshops and things. So yeah.
fantastic. To everyone listening, thank you again for listening to the Mindset Change podcast. This is me, Paul Shepherd, and Michelle Rowlinson. Do check out our book as well. I will put the link in the show notes, as well as all of her contact details. Don't suffer alone with this. Don't think that you've got to do this all by yourself. Do reach out, do get support, and take your life back. And I want to say to you all as well, have the most incredible day.